Hello, everyone, and welcome to an XTIVIA webinar, delivering information you need for the business future you want. We're sharing our knowledge to help your business thrive in today's new normal. My name is Alex Killian, and I'm the video producer here on XTIVIA's marketing team. And today you'll be hearing from the XTIVIA MuleSoft team about our custom connectors. With that, I will pass it over to Veda for our agenda this morning.
Thank you, Alex, and welcome everyone. For this webinar today, we will first start off with a brief introduction of custom connectors and their need. We'll then explore the building blocks of developing the custom connectors, including the best practices to follow so that we can build the right quality product. We'll proceed to reviewing the different steps involved in developing the custom connector, and then we will wrap up our meeting with the Q&A session. So let's begin. So what is a connector and why do we want to customize it? A connector is a software element that links between Mule4 and external resources. A resource can be a database resource, a protocol resource, or any third-party vendor APIs. If a third-party vendor provides their APIs, we can connect them with API methods to get the data off of those APIs. MuleSoft does provide many built-in connectors like SFTP, FTP, File, JDBC, and many other options. However, you may want to communicate with services that aren't available as pre-built connectors. So custom connectors address this scenario by allowing you to create and even share a connector with its own triggers and actions. So in this case, we would need to develop our own custom connectors. Let's dive a little deeper into why we would need to build a custom connector with a few examples. So one example is a large enterprise with custom logging mechanisms for all of its applications. But in addition to this, they also have Mule applications, but do not have a connector for that specific logging system. Therefore, we would need to develop a custom connector. There are also other scenarios where we can develop custom connectors, like Google Cloud. Google Cloud offers APIs for most of its products, like Google PubSub, Google Storage, but at this time, MuleSoft does not have any built-in connectors, and we also don't have a roadmap for when they're going to provide these connectors. So in this case, we would need to develop a custom connector. Another example would be Windows Remote Machine. We want to file from a particular folder from a remote computer. What we can do is we can mount that folder to our local system, and then we can give authorization privileges. Once that login authentication completes, we can get access to the file. And another scenario is an external system offering APIs, but Mule is not providing any bridge software to connect to it. So here we have another need for a custom connector development. Conclusively, we know that if there are any external resources or APIs and MuleSoft is not giving any connector support, then we need to develop a custom connector. So now that we know that we need a custom connector developed, what are the building blocks required for its development? For developing the custom connector in MuleSoft, we need the MuleSoft SDK software development kit package. MuleSoft is providing Mule SDK for Mule4 for developing custom connectors. In Mule SDK, there are two approaches to develop the custom connector. One is the Java-based SDK approach, and the other one is the XML-based approach. Generally, people prefer to go with the Java because it is more powerful and can solve complex business use cases. In comparison, XML has its limitations. So for this webinar, we're going to go with Java. With Java, let's understand the different components required for a custom connector development. And we can divide this into 5 entities. The first one is module. The module is a collection of components. Here we're specifying the components. Components may be operations, sources, routers, scopes, or functions. A module is the one where we can specify a namespace for it. A namespace is a unique identifier where we can specify that particular connector. For example, let's consider an HTTP connector. It has a requester and the listener. The listener comes under the components of sources, and requester comes under the components of operations. but we can identify this HTTP connector with the namespace called HTTP. So let's look at the next one, configuration. Configuration is a reusable property where we can use it in custom connector development. Across the connector, we can use those configurations. For example, an HTTP connector. I can take the HTTP connector itself. Here, for connection purposes, we need a host, port, and protocol. These are all things we can configure, and configuration is available wherever required for all Mule flows, which makes it reusable. Now, parameters. Unlike configuration, parameters are not reusable. It is specific to that particular component of the operation. For example, where we have a requester operation to get your file from a particular directory, we have to give a path for that. Example, get file. And let's say at the same time we want to create a file. You have to give another request for that path to create a file. So for each request operation, this path parameter is unique, and therefore it is not reusable. And finally, we're getting into this connection provider. What is connection provider? For example, if you're considering connecting to a database, you have to establish a connection to the database, execute your queries, and then destroy the connection. This is a very expensive process, and it'll degrade performance. What MuleSoft has done is it offers a pool connection provider. It provides a pool of connections. For example, I'm requesting a get file. I can take one connection from the connection pool, and then I can make use of this connection to get the file. And after that, I'm closing the request. Again, that connection will go back to the connection pool and stay for the next requested connection. So these are the 5 entities that we can use for the custom connector development. Now, before developing the custom connector, we must know what are the different best practices that we have to follow so that we can develop a suitable connector. The first one is the proper version of Java SDK. For example, Mule runtime environment engine is 4.1, and you've developed a connector on Java SDK version 1.2. This will not be compatible. It'll not support when you deploy and the connector with the runtime environment version 4.1. It'll not support and it'll not work. MuleSoft actually provides a list of compatible versions showing which Mule runtime engine with which Java SDK version. So according to this, we have to use the compatible version, learn how to develop, and then distribute it to the engine so that it can work. Next is the data weave expression language. We have to use the proper data weave expression language. We have different versions here as well, 1.1, 1.0, 2.0. Mule3, for example, will support the 1.0 version, but Mule4 supports the 2.0 version. So when you're working with Mule3, you have to use 1.0, and you're working with Mule4, you have to use 2.0. The next best practice is to make sure there's no transaction connection when you're doing a non-transaction functionality. For example, you're doing validations. In that case, you don't need any transactions. Next are the HTTP request and SOAP. So whenever you're developing, say for example, the third-party API is providing the API resources with the SOAP client, then you have to provide the connection for the SOAP related, not HTTP request. So we have to choose which one is required for that particular connection to access the third-party APIs. The last thing is we have to make sure that the connector is working end to end. So with that, we'd like to provide a list of connectors that XTIVIA has actually built for our clients. So for example, logging connector, server message block, network file sharing, Google Cloud Pub Sub connector, and Google Storage connector as well. We also have a technical demo that can be accessed via the link in the description below. Now we will begin our question and answer session, and I'll hand back the controls to Alex and Monty.
Thank you so much, Veda. It looks like we've gotten a few questions in already. So our first one here, what other connectors are you currently building in your organization?
Okay, so right now our team is building connectors for Samba, S-A-M-B-A, Samba server. It's a file share system for Linux. And we're also working on secure shell, SSH connectors and network file sharing, NFS, storage connectors, and Google Cloud PubSub connector. So these 4 are in progress.
Okay, excellent. Our next question here, does your organization have a framework or best practices that are used when building connectors?
Yes, we do. And that's our key for building the connectors, because our connectors are built through the best practices which you have seen in our demo, in our deck. And one of the key features we practice is the extensibility. It's highly custom to your business need. So if there is any, you get a requirement, and the connectors we offer can be extended to your business need. And with that, we also support upgradability. So as and when your Mule version changes, and also if your data weave expression language version changes, which is quite often, the connectors will be upgraded to match to the latest version of that. So 2 key aspects we practice in our connector development.
Okay. Our next question here looks like it has 2 parts. How many of your customers are using the customer logger to integrate MuleSoft with Splunk, Elk, RSA, etc.? And can the custom logger be extended to be used by other monitoring tools?
So to give a number, I would say around 4 to 5 customers are currently live with our logging connector, which supports Elk, Splunk primarily. And because our connectors are standard based, so it does support extending the connectors to additional integration tools you can bring on. So yes, the answer is yes, we do extend that to your need.
Okay, awesome. Our next question here, can you build a custom connector just for our custom business needs?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's where we specialize, creating a custom connector just for your business needs. So I would suggest to reach out to the contact list on what you see on our screen, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, excellent. It looks like that's the last question we got in this morning. Thank you so much, Mani. And thank you, Veda, for the presentation. And thank you all for joining this morning. As a reminder, our XTIVIA webinars are happening every Thursday at 10 a.m. So make sure to tune in for the next one and check out our on-demand webinar library on our website. And have a great Thursday, everybody.